The sound of water running in a quiet kitchen was the only thing breaking the stillness. But then came the soft, painful sobs of a little girl, her tiny hands raw from scrubbing dishes that seemed never-ending. In the golden sunlight streaming through the window, her tears sparkled like tiny crystals as she whispered to herself, "My hands hurt," but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Because behind her, the clinking of silverware and her mother's sharp voice reminded her that if the kitchen wasn't perfect, punishment would follow. This isn't just a story about chores. This is about a little girl, the life she lost too soon, and the moment one father finally opened his eyes to what really mattered. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe. Stories like this need to be seen. Emma was only 8 years old. A little girl who once chased butterflies and painted rainbows had grown up too fast. Her laughter had faded, replaced by the constant weight of responsibility. Every day was filled with chores far too heavy for her small shoulders. Her mother, a striking woman who cared more about appearances and parties than her children, pushed Emma harder with each passing day. Glamorous dresses, sparkling cocktails, and endless social events took her mother's attention away, leaving Emma to stand at the sink for hours, her hands icy and sore. Her older brother, Daniel, just 10, tried to help sometimes, but their mother always found ways to excuse him. "Boys shouldn't be doing these chores," she'd say. So Emma's small hands bore the brunt, scrubbing, washing, and cleaning, always under the watchful eye of a mother who never saw her pain. Her father, Mr. Anderson, was a millionaire businessman. To the outside world, he had it all: wealth, power, and success. To Emma, he was simply Daddy, the man who used to lift her on his shoulders, tell bedtime stories, and promise that the world couldn't hurt her. But lately, he was more of a stranger than a hero, constantly away on business trips, lost in meetings, and unaware of the storm raging inside his own home. That afternoon, the kitchen was filled with the sound of Emma's sobs mixing with the clatter of plates. "My hands hurt, Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her mother, dressed in a dazzling red gown for yet another evening out, snapped at her to stop whining and keep working. Daniel watched from the table, sympathy in his eyes but fear keeping him silent. And then, the front door clicked open. Her father was home, earlier than expected, a surprise no one could have predicted. He stepped into the house, briefcase in hand, suit crisp, tie perfectly knotted. But as he entered the kitchen, everything froze. There she was, his little girl, trembling at the sink, hands red and raw, shoulders shaking from exhaustion. Her mother stood behind her, scolding, towering, unbothered by her daughter's tears. Daniel sat quietly, trapped between worry and fear. In that moment, something inside Mr. Anderson shifted. Years of business battles and corporate victories suddenly felt meaningless. What was the point of wealth if his little girl was breaking under chores no child should ever bear? He set down his briefcase, slowly, carefully, but his eyes never left Emma. Anger and heartbreak burned hotter than any negotiation he had ever faced. He stepped forward and asked his wife, his voice calm but firm, why their daughter was crying over dishes instead of playing, laughing, and being a child. She stammered, caught off guard, muttering something about responsibility. But he had already seen the truth. Gently, he took Emma's tiny hands in his, feeling the roughness, the soreness, the pain of a child forced to grow up too soon. Kneeling down to her level, he whispered words that changed everything. Words that told her she no longer had to cry alone. Words that said, "Daddy is here. You're safe. Everything will change." And for the first time in months, Emma's tears were met with comfort instead of harshness. That night, the house was no longer cold and silent. Emma and Daniel sat at the dining table, and for the first time, their father served them dinner himself. He made them laugh. He made them talk. He made them remember what it meant to be children. Emma's smile returned, hesitant at first, but real. Her father had finally seen her pain, and he vowed never to let it continue. The days that followed were not easy. Confrontations with his wife grew sharper as he challenged the way she treated the children. She defended herself with excuses about discipline and keeping the house in order. But he had made up his mind. Love, presence, and care were more important than wealth, appearances, or social events. Slowly, he began rearranging his life. Business meetings were shortened. Trips were reduced. Long evenings in the office were replaced with evenings at home, laughing, playing, and sharing moments with his children. He discovered something profound. The true measure of success was not in contracts or bank accounts, it was in smiles, hugs, and moments shared. Emma blossomed again. She picked up her paintbrushes, filling the house with rainbows, flowers, and sunshine. Her father proudly framed them, placing them on walls that had once held expensive, impersonal art. Daniel found his voice, encouraged by a father who finally listened, guided, and protected. But the biggest change was in Emma herself. No longer did she cry at the sink. No longer did she whisper about hurting hands. Instead, she laughed in the garden, painted in the sunlight, and held her father's hands with joy. Each shared moment healed old wounds and erased the days when she had been forced to grow up too soon. Life was not perfect. His wife often resisted change, but he remained firm. He learned that kindness and presence mattered far more than appearances or social circles. He became the father his children had always longed for. And in doing so, he discovered a happiness deeper than any deal, any success, or any amount of money could ever provide. The story of a little girl crying over dishes became the story of a father awakening to what truly matters. A story that reminds us that love cannot be replaced by wealth, and presence cannot be substituted with gifts. Sometimes, the greatest change comes when a heart finally sees what has been invisible for far too long. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of love, family, and second chances, please like, share, and subscribe. Every action helps us bring you meaningful stories that heal and inspire.